Have you ever felt like you're down to your very last bit of hope? Your very last dollar or your very last ounce of strength? When you look at what you have, it seems so small, so insignificant, especially compared to the mountain of needs in front of you. It's a scary place to be, a place of scarcity and fear. Today, I want to share a powerful story that speaks directly into those moments. A story about a miracle that happened when things seemed most bleak. This story takes us back thousands of years to the land of Israel, which was gripped by a terrible, devastating famine. The fields were barren, the storehouses were empty, and people were struggling just to survive. Another day, in the midst of this crisis, God spoke to his prophet, a man named Elisha. He sent him on a journey, not to a palace or a wealthy city, but to a small, obscure town called Zarephath. God told him that there, a widow would provide for him. When Elijah arrived, he found the widow right where God said she would be. She was outside the town gate, gathering a few sticks. She looked tired, worn down by the constant struggle for survival. Elijah approached her and made what seemed like a simple request. "Could you please bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink?" As she went to get it, he called out again, "And please, bring me a piece of bread." This second request stopped her in her tracks. The look on her face must have been one of pure desperation. She turned to Elijah, her voice filled with despair, and said, "As surely as the Lord your God lives, I do want have any. Bread only a handful, of flour in a jar, and a little olive oil in a jug." She explained that she was gathering those sticks to make one final, tiny meal for herself and her son. After that, they would have nothing left. They expected to eat that last meal and then wait for death. Can you imagine her hopelessness? She was at the absolute end of her rope. Now, what Elijah said next is so important. He didn't dismiss her pain or ignore her reality. He looked at her and said, "Don't be afraid." In her moment of greatest fear, his first words were of comfort. Then he gave her a strange and challenging instruction. "Go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have, and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son." Think about that for a second. He was asking a starving woman to give away her last meal to feed a stranger before feeding her own child. From a human perspective, it sounds illogical, even cruel. But Elijah wasn't just making a demand. He was delivering a promise from God. He continued, "For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." Here was the moment of truth for the widow. She had a choice. She could cling to the little she had, relying on what she could see and control, which would have meant one more meal and then starvation. Or she could take a leap of faith, trusting in a promise that seemed completely impossible. She had to choose between fear and faith, between her limited resources and God's unlimited power. In an incredible act of courage and trust, she chose faith. The Bible says she went away and did as Elijah had told her. She took her handful of flour and her little bit of oil, and she baked a small cake for the prophet first. And then the miracle began. When she went back to her jar and her jug to make food for herself and her son, there was enough. The next day, she went back again, and there was still enough. And the next day, and the day after that, for the entire duration of the famine, every single day, her jar of flour was never empty, and her jug of oil never ran dry. They had everything they needed, day after day, all because of one small act of obedience rooted in faith. This story isn't just about a historical event. It's a timeless lesson for every single one of us. How often do we feel like that widow? We look at our bank accounts, our health, our relationships, or our careers, and we feel a deep sense of lack. We think, I don't have enough. I can't possibly do what's being asked of me. If I give any more, I'll have nothing left for myself. But this story shows us that God operates on a different economy. It's an economy of faith, not of sight. He doesn't look at what we have. He looks at what He can do with what we're willing to surrender to Him. The widow's small offering, given in faith, became the very channel for God's miraculous provision. What she thought was her last meal became the first of many. So, what is the handful of flour in your life right now? Is it your time? Your talents? Your finances? That little bit of energy you have left? It might feel small and inadequate, but God is asking you to trust Him with it. He's saying, don't be afraid. Put me first, even when it doesn't make sense, and watch what I will do. When we trust God with our little, He can multiply it in ways we could never imagine. He can turn our scarcity into abundance, our lack into more than enough. So, the next time you feel that fear of scarcity creeping in, remember the widow of Zarephath. Remember that your resources are never too small for God to use. Choose faith over fear. Trust His promise. Take that step of obedience and get ready to witness a miracle. Thank you so much for watching. If this story encouraged you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Let us know in the comments how God has shown His provision in your life. We'll see you in the next video.